So the first thing I'll say is that as a technology journalist, coming up here and following Nora Young is a little bit daunting, but I'm going to go ahead and give it my best shot. I think one of the things that Nora said is really the great part about this gig, and in my beat, is the knowledge economy. Everything from, aha, I got a great idea, to, oh yeah, we're all making money, is the space that I cover in Canada. In the best part of my job is really the stories that you hear from people. And I work with a lot of companies and cover a lot of companies who deal in the emerging technology space. Really, a lot of times it's, as I say, the story behind the technology. Take a look at a company like Club Penguin. You know, everybody knows that Club Penguin sold for $700 million to Disney. That's a really recognizable success. But did you know that it really just started off with three dads who wanted to create a safe place for their own young kids on the internet? That's the inspiration behind the idea, behind the technology. Strangely, great little web acceleration company out of Vancouver. Three guys sitting around and worked by a German physicist. Came back to the idea that ideas, problems hold their own answers. This is how they came up with their idea for intelligent caching, taking information that's available, readily available all the time, and making it an essential part of their web acceleration platform. Sandvine, intelligent broadband services company out of the Kitchener-Waterloo Triangle, didn't even have a business plan. They threw a party the night before they started the company for their entire staff. Everybody shows up about 2 hours late and hung over the next day. They set to work over the course of the next 3 months. What they do is they continually research. They tried it with 5 different research areas that the whole team agreed upon and said, what can we do here? What needs to happen in this individual space? They broke it down. As a team, they decided after 3 months' time that this is the one area we're going to focus into. Agile company building, taking an idea that started off in software development and extended it out. The idea then is that there's all these different things that go into creating an emergency trend. It's not just the technology. Nora hit on a huge part of it today, the cultural element. I just came out of a couple years back in school, hanging out with a lot of 2 and 23-year-olds. These kids today, they form relationships electronically using social networking tools, using things like IM, MySpace, YouTube, Flickr. They form relationships there for us, and then physically they get together afterwards, right? But the relationship is formed electronically first. That's a huge divergence from even a half generation ago. In terms of company building, we talk about the Sandvine example. What about in terms of academia? You know, the emerging trends in technology there. Our Canadian research is at some point going to get a crystal clear definition of their own intellectual property rights, the same way that their counterparts in the United States do, thanks to the Bayh-Dole Act. Is e-learning going to be something that's pervasive and not experimental anymore? Does the incubation and the commercialization and the transfer agents that are in the room here today, representing government, nonprofit, et cetera, do you have a plan for small and medium-sized enterprise? Do you have a plan to reach out and grab brilliant basement entrepreneurs? These are other trends that we need to take a look at. So yes, we need to build better boxes. We need to build better software. We need to figure out how to use things like social networking. But what are we going to be doing from a culture standpoint, from an academic standpoint, to pull the entire ecosystem together that we're always talking about? To that end, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to let the experts start talking to you about their understanding and their beliefs of what's going to be the great new emerging trends for the next year or so. So I guess we'll start with Tom.
Thank you very much for having me here. I am the bad news guy. I'm the guy who talks about the dark side of technology. Back in 1984, I wrote a CBC idea show called Crimes of the Future, in which we predicted identity theft. We missed the internet, so we weren't perfect, but we did predict identity theft. We also predicted that by the year 2000, everyone would be wire-heading, you know, as per science fiction guys, getting our pleasure center stimulated. So I guess in addition to the BlackBerry to iPhone, how many of you are wirejacking or wire-heading? I hope no one right now, right? But that's when you directly stimulate it. Okay, so what's the bad news? The uh-oh of today, a buddy of mine who works for PricewaterhouseCoopers in the UK picked this up yesterday for me. Apparently somebody for 99 pence bought a networking kit on eBay, which allowed access directly into some city's network. They call it a shire over there. So the shire basically gave access to their network for $1.79 US equivalent by selling this. So we all know when you sell stuff, when you sell you know, old discs or anything like that, which you shouldn't do, you should sanitize them. The big uh-oh that, you know, I like to talk a lot about is the TJX scandal, and I'm going to give you some news you can use here. You may remember that they made a big mistake. So my 3 ideas, the first one is, no matter how good we are with technology, we're going to screw it up somehow, and we better be ready for that. So, you know, they, through some bad use of wireless technology, compromised a few 45.7 million credit cards. In addition, people who returned stuff to them had their driver's license information stolen. So I made a bit of an issue. I said, you know, they would make me feel better if they gave me something. Like if they gave me a $25 credit, I'd probably go down to Winners, which is their store here in Canada, and I would go and spend $50 there. So what the heck did they do? Well, they have now come out with exactly that offer, except it's $30 US. And there's a website, tjxsettlement.com. So I want all of you, as a piece of homework, to go home before October 13th and claim your $30 gift card at Winners. You don't even have to show proof that you got ripped off. I got ripped off to the extent that they reissued my Visa card, and my bank mysteriously said, we're sending you a new Visa card. And I said, I don't want one. They said, no, we're sending you a new one. And we had a little battle with the bank. Anyway, the point is, if you go to tjxsettlement.com, fill out the form, they'll send you a $30 gift card. That actually is a very intelligent response because they're buying some goodwill. It's a little bit corrupted by the fact that how many of you knew about this? Right? So they really haven't exactly broadcasted it. I've now gone into 2 separate Winners stores and asked to see the manager and said, tell me about the settlement. And they've said, what settlement? So it's there. It's tjxsettlement.com. It's available to Americans and Canadians. So basically what they've done is some information that was very scarce. Only a few people, some consultants, some computer people, knew that there was something wrong, maybe less than 100. Went to a worldwide piece of information, which is 100 million, at least, people knew that there was a problem with TJX stores, and it went back down now to a few people. So there's an interesting dimension that we haven't explored, and I'm trying to do some research in just how public is public information. Yeah, this is kind of explained in their SEC filings. I went and read their Form 10-K, but in a very, very obscure way. A buddy of mine just published a book last week. It's going to be a bestseller. It's called Poison Pills, The Inside Story of the Vioxx Scandal. This is a guy I went to college with, and he basically has found the same trend. That information that was known to a few Merck executives suddenly became a huge public relations issue because people were dying from their medication. So something that we need to think about is how do we deal with the screw-ups and how do we deal with that dimension of how public we make them. Okay, second issue, persistent information. One of my favorite websites in the world comes from Hernando County, Florida. If you get arrested down there, and please don't, Sheriff Richard B. Nugent will put you up on his website. Now that's one bad thing, and there's an example. So there's somebody who committed domestic battery, somebody grand theft, possession of a controlled substance. You know, there was reference to pot. So anyway, first bad thing is that these people did this stuff years ago, actually, but they're still in my presentation. In fact, I even have in a longer version of this a minor, a 16-year-old, who was exposed there. So information tends to persist. So in this case, I wish the government wasn't posting it. I also wish I didn't have to put it in my presentation. So please think about the persistence of information. When we put it out there, we can never get it back. There's a little example from Google Street View. Some of you have seen people on Street View captured coming out of adult video stores. This is a crime in progress. That's a lock-picking set coming out. So the Google Street View camera, which goes around doing street-level images, managed to catch a crime in progress. Okay, my favorite is zoominfo.com. How many of you have checked yourself on ZoomInfo? Please go home and do that. I checked myself and discovered I'm a professor at the University of Calgary. That's pretty good. I also discovered in an earlier visit to this that I'm the chairman of the board of a defense contractor in Virginia. Not exactly correct. So I claimed my profile and I corrected it. But guess who hasn't claimed his profile? Harper Stephen, somewhat reluctant leader is his title. Company is Conservative Party. Okay, how did that happen? It's a search engine that goes out there without any permission from Mr. Harper or anyone else and finds articles. So some newspaper reporter said, Stephen Harper, the somewhat reluctant leader of the Conservative Party, and this is being deduced. This is what I call silent information. I'm spending a lot of time now studying information about us that's being accumulated, being archived, being sold. ZoomInfo is free to look at, but if you want to do certain kind of queries, like give me all the HR managers for the Fortune 100 companies, that's when they charge you. And actually, this is an improvement because Mr. Harper's previous title was odious leader. So it's now been changed from odious leader to somewhat reluctant leader. Last example, rottenneighbor.com. It's a website that somebody started so you can basically say things about your neighbors. Good things, but mostly bad things. The people who post on this are not the most educated in the world. So here's one that says pedophiles, happens to be spelled wrong. Watch out for your kids. You live here. These brothers do everything together, even get it on in the bushes, watching the kids play. Now, I would hate to be the people who live in that trailer park, and I'd really hate to be the people who live in the trailer that's pointed out there. So the ability to put this information out there, share it on the internet with the world, no redress, no correction, is a pretty serious issue. Last one, because there are still airlines that feed you, and Air Canada, in fact, is one of them, and they offer you various meals, like vegetarian meals, Hindu meals, kosher meals, Muslim meals. Please, when you fly, if it's on a flight that they have food, order one of those 3 meals in some random order to confuse the system. Because I can tell you that that data is being profiled, and you actually are typed by the type of meal that you order, and various other things as well. And guess which major international government is interested in that? So I want to wrap up, because I think I'll probably use my time here by saying that that's what this place looks like a few months from now. That's not me, but I have gone off that cliff, and I don't recommend it. And please come back. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marina Fisher. I'm with Sun's Startup Essentials program. And I'd like to talk briefly about cloud computing. So cloud computing today is one of the top trends. And Sun, with our program and technologies, actually plays a key role in accelerating that. So there are key trends that both fuel the cloud computing, as well as there are trends that, as a result of cloud computing, that we're seeing in industry that I'll talk about. First of all, we're seeing the change in the business model. The economy of scale that cloud computing introduced to startups, mid-size, and even enterprise-level customers is astonishing. Today, the startup market primarily focuses on the business and the business model that they are trying to deliver, rather than focusing on the infrastructure, which was the common trend in the past. When I talked to VCs, and we had a great event last week in the Bay Area where startups and entrepreneurs were meeting, they said, we really want startups to focus on their main IP. We want them to build that technology, that innovation, and leverage cloud computing as a means to deploy it. And we at Sun actually powering up and providing fundamental building blocks to enable that cloud computing, all the way from the cold thread technologies. And yesterday in the discussion in the first keynote, Paul Strong mentioned that the multi-threading, multi-core technologies helping us to build cloud computing, helping us to build efficient and green data centers. And this is another trend. You know, as you start building the grid engines, as you start building cloud computing, you realize that the space, the amount of cooling, and the heating emission that you need to worry about is overwhelming, and you need to do something about it. So Sun, with our innovative storage and server and overall technologies, enables companies to build cloud computing that is based on the green and eco-friendly data center concepts. So the other thing that cloud computing introduced is sharing and the open source. If today we wouldn't have the technologies that we have in terms of LAMP stack, Open Solaris, ZFS that people are using, we probably won't be there, because startups that are actually having those great innovative ideas, they don't need to worry about paying licenses for their operating systems or buying expensive tool set. They're leveraging off software that's out there, and they're able to develop and scale with that software. And Sun was actually one of the first companies that introduced and had the vision of sharing, with NFS, with Java, with Open Solaris, with technologies that we opened up. We really help companies to scale up and build and deliver what they can do today in terms of the cloud computing and scale their startups. So another thing is I want to talk about that network is the computer. That's the vision that we had about 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. And we use the cloud computing and grid computing today just as an engine. We don't worry about what's the underlying infrastructure, how it's scaled. But But really, somebody had put that innovation in place, and Sun was one of the first visionary in this space where we actually invested a lot of IP and opened up and shared that IP with the world. So with Sun Startup Essentials program, we're helping startups to monetize their businesses. We offer a myriad of services and technologies for companies to leverage. We offer free 12-month hosting for Facebook and open social application developers. We offer discounted hosting for companies who are doing other type of development, and it starts as low as $40 a month. We have partners, the hosting vendors, that have SAS 70 data centers, and I know I talked to some of you the other day that were looking into the data center with those characteristics. We also provide technical assistance. So if you want to know how you want to scale your MySQL cluster, or how do you want to lay out topology around your application servers or front end or back end, we provide expertise and help you with that, so that startups can actually focus on their primary IP and developing innovations in the industry space that they're in. We also help startups to connect with VCs, and we have a program for startups called VC Connect as part of Startup Essentials. So there are a number of services that we offer that startups are leveraging today, and we help them to grow. We have an application called Bumper Sticker App that started small, and now it's scaling up to 1 billion hits a month, that is running on the Sun Joint Accelerator. And the underlying technology is Open Solaris. It's Sun's infrastructure, servers, and storage. And the key point there is that we let you not to worry about what's underneath. What is that hardware stack is going to be? Just build your application, deploy, and we will make sure that you scale. So the key trend that I see that fueling up cloud computing today is definitely it's the green data center. It's the economy of scale where people actually. I was talking to one of the startup, and actually they are no longer a startup, but one of the Facebook application developer whose application is number 5 on Facebook, and they have something between 5 to 9 million users. And they started very small, and they really didn't know what they're doing in the back end, and then they suddenly realized that people like it, what they're doing there. It's called Green Patch. And the other thing, the result of that cloud computing, result of that open social trend, is that people want to do a lot of good stuff for the world. For example, as part of the Green Patch application, they're donating a lot of their revenue to environmental organizations, to organizations that help to fight with results of hurricane. And we definitely appreciate that. And at Sun, we are participating in those efforts as well. And yesterday I mentioned that we have a site called Kuriki, and it's the free and open site for parents, for teachers, for students to go and leverage on the curriculum that's out there. And we participate in other, in other trends and activities that help the planet, help the world, help people. And I think that now that people are actually thinking of what kind of application should I build, and they also not only want to build the great technology, but also help people and help the world. And I think that's another trend that we're seeing as a result of this, immense cloud computing, green data center, startup booming, innovation in the space. So definitely come to talk to us. And we have, as part of Startup Essentials program and as part of other services and offerings at Sun, a lot of great things that we offer, and we work with companies both on the entrepreneur and VC side and the startup side. Thank you.
In a longer term, what is going to have an impact on the future of computing, in my opinion, is quantum computing. and then use of nanotechnology in the hardware side. So that is a longer term. And when it comes and when it happens, and the degree of maturity depends on how the market goes and how the research comes. There are tidbits of these things happening, but I would say 5 to 10 years probably. You will see a degree of real usage of these technologies. On the shorter term or medium term, you will see one thing that is going to change is the semantic web and Web 3. And these are some of the newer stuff that is going to give more meaning to the Web 2 and what is happening in social networking. Is going to make internet and use of internet more meaningful because it goes based on trying to make the computer understand what we mean, what we are searching and what we are looking for. So there are lots of research is being done and lots of work is being done. The key to it is the infrastructure of Web 3 and semantic web that is being developed and the standards that are being developed. So lots of folks are working on it, and it will happen. So that would be the next level in use of web and what web can offer. To me, that is going to significantly change the stuff you will see. Now, cloud computing is here, is another trend. The degree of maturity is not there, and the key is the rate of maturity and what will happen to it. Basically, look at the cloud as the cloud of internet. So you can put anything under it and anything above it. The key is the technologies and the concepts that have gone into this. Software as a service, all the pipelines that are supposed to be there, all the like pure hardware and software, grid computing, utility computing that has gone trying to build the infrastructure to do that. And as I mentioned yesterday, the big impact socially, as we were talking earlier, is will make the playing field much more level with the smaller and bigger companies. Each one will have their own niche market. Bigger companies will do different things than the small companies. You can put your server on the web, and it could be part of cloud computing. Okay. So that's the trend that is going to develop, and you will have niche players as well as general players that offer everything. The biggest impact I would see, and I'm seeing on the market, is really use of ICT as enabling technology in different fields, like medical science and social science, in e-learning, in oil and gas exploration. Every other facet of life, you will see use of ICT. And some of the clients that we have in IRAP and we see what's going on, you would be really surprised when they are fully operational and they have brought their product to the market. So the impact of some of these type of technologies is going to be really significant, just because we were talking about e-learning. It will sort of graduate from e-education, which is organized learning, into e-learning, pure e-learning, okay? And doesn't mean e-education will not be there. Yes, it will be there, and it will be offered, just like what was happening in Florida. It is actually going to happen in Alberta, okay? But that will evolve into e-learning, that anybody can learn anything at any place and get their certificate. You don't have to go to a classroom. Now, what kind of social impact that will have, I guess I leave it to the social scientists to look at it. Whether are we going to lose the human factor, human interaction, or the cyber interaction would be a complementary interaction to the human interaction. And the whole social ramification of these type of issues. Another client of mine is doing virtual colonoscopy, and they're going to go to the level of accuracy that currently the real biopsy can give you. So that type of comfort and offering will help a lot of people that currently are going to biopsy and doing physical colonoscopy. There are examples of this. I mean, I can give you a lot. And that is where I see the biggest impact of ICT in our social fiber and how we interact, how we do things. And obviously, as I mentioned, the Web3 building on what is currently, really you guys are seeing as far as Web2 based on social networking. Web3 is going to be another revolution. Semantic web would be another revolution in web. So just be ready for that. Thank you.
So I guess everybody's bringing a different perspective today, and mine's a little more of a business industry perspective where we're at. Cloud computing, absolutely upfront, no denial, is having a major impact and will continue to have a major impact as it matures. Where it has the impact, though, the greatest benefit today is the SMB market, the small, medium businesses, the startup organizations. And that would be categorized as an organization, 250 people and less, perhaps 500 and less. And it's very much as you said, it is an equalizer. It allows them to carry on with the business of their business, not the business of IT. And that's very important. However, for the larger organizations, cloud compute doesn't have a whole lot of interest at the moment because the traditional behaviors of security, protection of the intellectual property, restricting the access to applications, the concept of commingling your data, the concept of extending your directory schemas is absolutely abhorrent. They will not chase down that road because it's an undesirable activity. It's something they don't want to do. However, they see the benefit of what cloud compute can bring to the organization. So you're going to see private clouds. And private clouds are something that for the next 2 years they'll be trying to figure out what it means. Is it just hosting an app on a web server, or is it something fundamentally different? And it's really the new data center. That new data center is probably going to be 5 to 7 years to architect and deploy for an organization, a mid-sized enterprise organization today. It's not something they're going to forklift. It's something they're going to take a very painstaking effort to look at the applications, and you look at any organization that has well over 250 applications. Of those, perhaps 50 are commercial off the shelf, and the other 200 are custom built ad hoc. We have a CPU running, and we're not sure what it does, but if we turn it off, the company might fail. So those challenges exist, which leads to the second part, the data center itself. The real trend is the deconstruction of the data center, the deconstruction of our concepts around what a server does, what the interactions are, what the infrastructure is, what the spindles are, the operations, the provisioning. And we tear apart the traditional concept of data centers and we reconstruct it around the new technology suites and the new analogies that are out there. We've looked at the virtualization. We know that virtualization works very well with regards to placing guest OSs on hardware CPU platforms. We've had the InfiniBand and other technologies that allow us to strap together physical CPU motherboards, memory, storage, and extend that architecture, but with limited success. We look at some of the grid implementations out there where we run code on top of the OS or in conjunction with the OS, and we shim off to multiple hundreds or thousands of CPUs, commodity-based parts of the work, and call this a grid architecture overall. It works, but there's two problems with it. The first one is it is not ultra-low latency, high efficiency. As a matter of fact, it's very inefficient. It works, but it's not the cleanest way of implementing. And when we look at new data centers, new data center architectures, there's a green element to it. Last week I was in a presentation by Steve Forbes to the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, and he said that America will, in the upcoming future, use more energy than ever before to move business forward. And he's right. But the corollary to that was more efficiently and more effectively as well. And that's part of where that key comes. We can run quad processor, 8-core processors, 16s are coming eventually. They replicate, they emulate multiple discrete servers that we have today. When we take and we reconstruct the new data center, storage is independent of a CPU chassis that's called a server or a blade server potentially. Services that we traditionally would layer on top of the operating system like SSL, security, Active Directory elements, these are now pulled away from those virtualized machines and now become part of the network itself, where you distribute SSL functionalities, deep-packet inspections, XML transformation, process transformations inside the network, and the network becomes the platform. And we now look at applications in a very different fashion, and how we orchestrate and provision looks very different from what we traditionally do today. So that's the trend going forward. Things like decoupling storage and CPU and applications through virtualizations, through fiber channel IP, or fiber channel over Ethernet, iSCSI solutions, these all change. And what comes with that is a whole bunch of, I won't say new innovation or new inventions, but new innovations around how data centers operate, how you move data around inside of an environment which has traditionally been treated as a high loss, highly unreliable, and you turn this into a very reliable, no loss guarantee type infrastructure. Which brings me to my third point, and that is where the real trending is going. Thinly veiled behind this is the Web 2.0. And the data center, the applications, the processing now enables the new collaboration. And we've seen collaboration in various niches, and we start to see consolidation of different communications collaboration tools. Facebook is used as a big example here today. Facebook recently brought in an IM functionality. So they're starting to integrate something in where people that wouldn't sign on to one of the traditional mainline IMs, now you're in Facebook, you have this different collab. We're seeing more consolidation, and going forward, you're going to see these more unified multi-IM functionalities, video, voice, text messaging, GPS information. And our children and the millennials, and I'm an aging millennial, by the way, our children and the millennials, they're going to look for more of this. They're going to have that expectation. My kids get wigged out when we got their first cell phone contract at 13, and I didn't have caller ID on the phone. Oh, for shame, I'm a bad dad. But what they really want is to know who's calling them so they can do a call screening type process. What they really want is an SMS type message so that they can do a thoughtful response to that message. What they really want is to have their Netopia access, not Facebook, because that's for old people. And these types of things. The description I gave you yesterday to some people was that I right now am online, offline, offline. I am online for receiving email in my pocket at the moment. I am offline when it comes to instant messages, and I'm also offline when it comes to voicemail. So I have these three different contexts, and it's my presence information. Looking forward, presence and context and geolocation has a whole lot of interest around it, which with collaboration takes us to the next step. How do we access specialists? How do we get to SMEs? How do we have a startup organization find the right skill set? Or how do we have a research group find the right researcher or specialist in GPS geo-coordination or something? And what is their presence availability? Because the concepts of time zones quickly disappear on us here. And where are people's availabilities? So that presence becomes very interesting. And then also what extends from that is the virtualization of the specialist as well, the virtualization of people, where you may have a speaker that you want to have come in, but that speaker has already delivered this presentation. So for them, this is a very ineffective, highly non-productive activity which they've repeated several times over. How do you capture that presentation, and how do you bring that presentation to a just-in-time type environment? Or how do you make that speaker more available to a much wider population, a much more interactive population? And this is some of the interesting challenges of Web 2.0. You have the one-to-one, the one-to-many, the many-to-many, the few-to-many type scenarios. How do you have those interactions? And how do you do that between a desktop, a mobile iPhone, a Nokia, or a third-party device as well? So those are the trends that I see on that side. Okay.
I'm going to take a very academic perspective over the next 10 minutes, and I work really down here at the triple point of these three, but right at trying to build systems, utilize them, and hopefully, I think, also trying to bring in new theoretical computational science ideas into the systems. And I'll come clean straight away. I think there is nothing exciting in the horizon in terms of cyber infrastructure. That's not to say there aren't different things or new things coming, but there's nothing exciting. There's, for me and for the organization and for the community I represent, there is only hard work ahead in delivering, in taking all the hard work that has been put in over the past 10 to 12 years in cyber infrastructure and making it an infrastructure that will deliver to the scientists and to the researchers. There are many levels at which hard work needs to be performed: policies, complexities, hiding the complexity, and I could just go on, but I'd need an entire hour for why I think the situation with distributed cyber infrastructure or distributed computing is not very exciting. It's just a lot of labor. So these three are some of the questions which the organizers sent to us. The second question was, do things work? What works? What doesn't work? And the truth is, some things work. We have Nancy not here in the audience. She's off at this board meeting. And one of the efforts she leads at the TerraGrid is the Science Gateways. And that's one of the phenomenal success stories of distributed cyber infrastructure. But there's some things which just don't work. And that's the original vision of the TerraGrid and other distributed infrastructure projects. When you try to couple more than one resource and try to utilize these resources in a coordinated, concurrent fashion towards solving a single problem. And then the other question was, where have things in general worked? And I would like to make a very generalized remark, and I won't have time, at least now, to substantiate this. I claim that wherever an application focus has been maintained in the development of cyber infrastructure, things have worked there, and where that focus has been lost, things are in a bit of a shamble. So again, I'm abusing the freedom and the flexibility given to me by the organizers, and I'm just going to answer what I think the top three trends are. And I think they're not really trends, but the three drivers of whatever the trends are applications, applications, and applications. And you're probably not surprised by this time hearing me say such a thing. Again, I speak with my TerraGrid hat on for a minute, and it's a $250 million, I think now a $400 million project, and there's only one metric that the US NSF is using to evaluate the TerraGrid and all the next generation cyber infrastructure. What new science, what new research has it engendered? And that's what I mean by it's all about applications and thereby all about the science and the research that it's done. Try to be less and say it's changing the landscape once you start bringing in applications, and you probably see the attempt at humor there. And also, there is no solution for bringing applications to the fore. There's no trend, there's no catchphrase. It's just, once again, it's got to be about the hard work that will bring about applications. But I just want to say a bit focused on the topic that the organizers wanted us to speak about, and that's what are the various trends and hypes. And some of you have seen Gartner's what is called the hype curve. Won't have time once again to go into the details, but you probably are aware of the 5 stages. And this is their hype curve from 2006, and you can see where grid computing is. And you can see, well, you can't see where grid computing is in 2008. It does not exist on their hype curve anymore, right down there. And this is really what I'm trying to say. From the perspective of the community that I represent, it's not grids, it's not clouds, it's nothing. It's just applications, high-level abstractions, and the support for usage modes. And the 3 communities that I represent are the Theoretical eScience Institute, which is trying to see how applications can use cyber infrastructure, the TerraGrid, as I've alluded to, and my home institution, LSU. I've already kind of said this, and I'm going to rush through. Don't worry, there are 20 slides, but I'm not going to take 20 minutes or a minute per slide. I'm just going to really rush through. I think the status of grids or distributed cyber infrastructure is it's a precarious situation. My primary concern is the great level of complexity and the fact that it's just so difficult to develop and deploy applications that can utilize the infrastructure. Again, there are several levels of details there. I've been working with distributed systems since about 2001, and I've led some of these projects. I was a junior researcher in some of them. And I just want to tell you one thing, that this spans a very broad range of scientific applications. But the one thing that remains constant, it is still a royal pain to deploy and develop applications that can use distributed infrastructure. And I assigned timelines to show you that things have not really changed over the 7 or 8 years that I've been involved. And I ask, since this is posted as a cloud session, I ask, will clouds make any of the above easier, or any developing and deploying these applications easier? And will it make these applications more effective in delivering the science that motivated me to perform these scientific calculations? And I think the answer is a no. I recently wrote a paper with one of the keynote speakers from last year, Jeffrey Fox, and that's gotten quite a bit of attention because Ian Foster started criticizing that on his blog, and then it was picked up by the Google and the Yahoo cloud computing groups. And so what I'm going to try to say is that this is a quick, in a nutshell, in a single slide, a summary of what that paper is trying to say. And it's really trying to say, once you go through the systematic formalisms and you develop the concepts of a general versus a narrow grid, a general grid being something like the TerraGrid, and I'd even say WestGrid, which does not have a specific set of applications in mind when designed and defined, but a broad range, whereas something like a data grid, something like the LHC grid, which not only has very specific scientific applications in mind, but also has very specific usage modes in mind. And we go on to claim that the only successful grids, if at all, have been the narrow grids and not general purpose grids. And I think that's what people have been taking objection to. And just going through the formalism, I want to leave you with the bottom line here, that ultimately there is a connection between clouds and grids. And at least from the perspective we take, clouds are a type of narrow grids, as in well-defined usage modes, smaller set of applications that can be run and that it caters to, and importantly, an explicit support for a usage mode. And I should have mentioned this earlier. A usage mode is defined as a commonly recurring pattern in an either programmatic access or deployment. And so when infrastructure specifically and explicitly supports usage modes, and the interfaces are simple, that's when your grids or what have you can be labeled a cloud. Okay, and this is just saying more of the same. So as an academic, I asked the question, so what does that mean for us as science application developers and people who need to deploy this infrastructure? Well, there are many unanswered questions first. Fact that is, when you start doing interoperation between clouds, you're essentially going to get exactly the same level of complexity of grids. So the grid problems redux coming in through the back door. But from an application perspective, what you really need is the higher level abstractions. And we heard Paul Strong talk a lot about agile execution applications, models yesterday. And it was very heartening to see that, because a lot of the applications that we're concerned with have this characteristic. If distributed systems at the end of the day are just going to be parallel and cluster systems, a couple more of those available, then there's really not much value. It's when this whole is greater than just the sum of the parts, i.e. they're able to utilize these distributed resources opportunistically in an agile fashion. And that's very important to keep reminding ourselves that we need abstractions to support that. And so here's the academic approach that I've been taking over the past few months. So we've all heard of Google's MapReduce. We all know the importance of it. We know it's been a game changer. But what we often fail to remind ourselves is that it's tied to a specific infrastructure, i.e. Google's infrastructure or Yahoo's infrastructure. The question, and number one. Number two, there are many other patterns out there, like MapReduce, waiting to be discovered, or that can be used, that can be used effectively. And the important question is it possible to provide the power of MapReduce and other patterns in an infrastructure-independent way? And then here's where I start rushing. I'm just going to go through something which I've been involved with over the past few years, something called the Simple API for Grid Applications. Here's what I want to say, is that once you get the interfaces and the high-level abstractions right, it does not matter whether you use UK's National Grid Service, the TerraGrid, or cloud systems. You can utilize you can develop your distributed application once, and you can use any underlying infrastructure. And there is a paper which I can point you to where we show how all this is done. I basically want to mention the power of abstractions. And this is really what I will end with finally. It's not grids versus clouds, to be repetitive. It's about applications, higher level abstractions and usage modes. And once you get these right level of abstractions and interfaces and support for these usage modes, then the question of grid versus cloud or the next buzzword is irrelevant, at least from an application developer's point of view. And there is a reason why there's a certain energy or certain excitement about clouds in some circles, and that's because current general purpose grids seem to have failed. I will leave one question to the audience, which every time I've given a talk or variant of this talk, I've left as my closing remark, and I haven't received an answer so far. Can you name one scientific application that would need clouds and could not, because they could not use the TerraGrid or substitute the TerraGrid with your favorite grid system, if grids had lived to the original definition and vision that's been outlined in many, go back to the Foster-Kesselman book or the original papers. And I would really like to hear from you if you think there is a single scientific application that does need clouds and would not be able to use your high-end grid. With that, I'll end.
One of the things that I didn't hear, I talk to CTOs and CEOs all the time who are building companies, who are somewhere between that startup and getting out there, going to market kind of stage. And one of the biggest problems that they talk to me about on a routine basis is finding the right people to bring into their company. Who are the right people? Where do you find them? What are the skill sets that you're looking for? I didn't hear anybody talk about the emerging workforce in what's happening culturally inside your companies, inside your institutions. Are you engaging people, young people, a different way? Are you finding there's different challenges to recognizing and rewarding people and keeping them on board? Is there a long-term vision for how you're going to take somebody who's just entering your company today as a junior programmer, as a junior account manager, right, and bring them along for a 20-year career and keep them in this incredible changing, shifting, exciting tech world that we live in? So I think I'm going to direct this to Marina and Peter, the two company people that we've got here, to talk about how your companies are dealing with the changes in the workforce in today's environment.
So definitely there is a major change in how people view today's workforce, because I think one of the key questions that people ask before hiring somebody for the startup or whatever company is, what's your ideas? You got to be controversial. You got to be different. Even with the startups, when we talk about it, it's like what kind of innovative ideas do you bring to the market? You really can't be yet another me. You really have to differentiate yourself. You really have to have a cohesive view of what's going on out there and how you're going to be, stepping above all of that. And, whether you're in the marketing field, business development, or technology, particularly, you can't just start, building technology just because. You really have to have, a smartness around how you're going to penetrate that market. What's the driving force behind that? So we definitely see a lot of startups where, the first question that being asked them is like, how are you different? Why your startup will take off? Why your technology is superior and why it matters to the rest of the world? So I think that's being asked. But maybe that's always been that question. I don't know. But now I definitely see that being as a one of the key things, differentiator between the myriad of startups that's out there, myriad of developers and technologists and web developers and so forth. But how are you different? How your technology is going to help or make a difference in the world?
How about culture? I just came out of a couple of years back in school, and every student there was text messaging, using Facebook, IM as communications tools. I don't expect that now that they've graduated and entered the workforce that they are going to want to stop using those tools. I'd like to know how Sun and Cisco are approaching incorporating the culture in the tools that these kids are already familiar with and incorporating that into your work environment and really making it a part of your own business planning.
You know, we actually are taking advantage of that, and as a matter of fact, we hired some people who just got out of the college and help us to drive that vision. And we see a lot of technologies that help people with, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and you name it, million different accounts, actually to consolidate and manage those identities across the world. Because, as you said, every single, graduate now has all those accounts, and they live out there. They live in that open social networking space. And we're trying to steer our business and try to work with individuals and startups that actually help to manage those things. And definitely, it's part of our, community as well. So within Sun, we encourage people to be part of the, Second Life. We have the whole community out there. I have, a Twitter and a Facebook and you name it account. Partially because of my job, but the other thing is because I like what I do. So you really see the trend where the work and the life really merging. And your presence online is not just because you are working or doing research or you are studying or whatever you may be doing as your part of your work, but also part of your personality, part of your interests, parts of your hobbies. So all of that is becoming together and merging, and it's actually, to some extent, it simplifies things, because whenever you pick your work, you want to pick something that you enjoy, and even in your spare time, you probably want to think about it and go online and do research and maybe blog about it. So that's definitely taking momentum, at least at Sun, where people actually are taking advantage of all those communities out there.
I think one of the things that was identified recently is globally, if we look at all the world markets and the economies that are growing, the opportunities out there for connectivity and how to connect people, we are looking for a requirement of about 400,000 to 500,000 network skilled people globally by 2013, 2014. So there's no challenge out there right now, is there? We've done a few things, recognizing that, in our organization, we look for a very high caliber skill set person, and those people tend to require 7 years of experience in a vertical area. The good news is that we found a pill that we can give to people, and it gives them that skill set and experience. It's just a time-release pill, and it takes 7 years. But to address the bigger challenge, though, is we're involved in a number of activities, community activities, social activities with Boys and Girls Club, other organizations across Canada. And to be honest, we are in the classroom in elementary school with students, showing them the excitement behind IT. What is the opportunities? One of the little games that we've constructed is, where does your email go? And we go through a process where a team of students will go through and take an email, they'll break it apart into envelopes, they'll packetize it, move it across the network, and do reassembly, and kind of illustrate how this industry works and some of the underpinnings. Then in junior high in Calgary, the post-secondaries have banded together to bring in every grade 9 girl in the city to expose them to an entire day of what are the opportunities in the industry. How can you make this a career, not just a job? What are the things that you should be thinking about, and put some keynote speakers in front of them. My director most recently. The high school levels, we now have academy programs where we're teaching fundamentals around networking 101, HTML. Forest Line High School in Calgary, they have students build computers. They piecemeal them, but they build these computers and they get them onto networks and they understand the technologies. And then into the post-secondaries, when they're into the UFC type program, the university type programs, or the Polytech type programs, and then that's where we like to find them. And at that point, we hopefully have seen people with enough passion and interest that we will, and we do this annually in Canada, we post out associate systems engineering positions. And candidates from across Canada, we shortlist down, fly them into Toronto, 3 days of interviews, and then the final candidates from that, we hire them, and we move them to Raleigh, North Carolina, and then we finish the next year of their training and education on how to work in the force, how to get some of that skill, and we fast track perhaps 3 years of experience into about a 10-month window, and then bring them into the field as junior people, but very well equipped to move forward. So that's one of the things we're doing on trying to get that talent in. From this, we see a lot of interesting interactions. As a manager that received a millennial, I received specialized training as to how to deal with them. And it was very confusing to me because it was very, logical right up front how you deal with these people. They're no different with the late baby boomers and some of the traditionalists I work with. They're just different styles. At Cisco, we have a very strong culture around diversity and inclusion and collaboration and all these activities, and we're developing products around it. So a lot of these new millennials coming in are part of the development process, as are the late baby boomers, because what's good for one group of people may not be good for the other. Internally, the whole bloggy wiki type thing has been kicking off big time, but what's more important around it is the way collaboration has changed and the way we viewed it, how to provide content. So rather than doing a textual search on a product information or a technology subset and looking for PowerPoints or PDF documents, we've extended that out to what is the most relevant media of information. So it could perhaps be a video on demand, it could be a media presentation event that was done and captured external to the company, such as a venue as this, or it could be the PDF, or it could be somebody's side blog information about that technology as well. So we're using all these things for them. Getting to the work-life balance, we've always struggled for work-life balance, but the new workforce has a different view around it. It's more like work-life integration. That's more marketing than it should sound. All the people that are on my team, they have the ability to work from home. They have a mobile device, and they can choose to work from wherever they want, whatever time it takes them, whatever mechanisms they want to use. And we have that full flexibility throughout the organization, what works best.
Tom, I think you had the initial quote of the day right off the top as a journo. Be ready for the fact that we are going to screw up. That, to me, implies a couple of things. It implies that there's people who are sitting on top of organizations and making some pretty large spending decisions and strategic decisions in terms of which way companies and technology are going to be going, that first have to admit that they have screwed up, and I think that might be your first stumbling block. But I'd be curious to get your thoughts, and really anybody on the panel here, to talk about if that's part of the mentality we have to have, be ready for the fact that we're going to screw up, then what does that mean in terms of our business models, our economic models, how we're going to make some cash off this thing and control our costs? What does that mean in terms of, on a very hard level, in terms of infrastructure design, in terms of how we're setting our layers and whatnot, building platforms, right? And for the academics in the room and on the panel, I would then ask the question, if we're going to be taking that mentality, if that's going to be really important, accept the fact that we're going to screw up, my question then becomes is, how do you teach that to the young people coming up through your organization? If you're a computer sciences teacher, how do you go beyond simply teaching the language and the ability and the tricks of the trade, and then teach them to be prepared to enter into an environment that is not fixed and rigid, which can be a very, very difficult transition for people who come from a hard sciences background to make?
What makes you and Nora good journalists is that you acknowledge right away that you don't know everything about this, right? And companies have to do that too. So to some extent, I studied that whole TJX thing very, very carefully. And yeah, they went on television. They admitted that they screwed up. But also they were being driven by laws. Now the interesting thing is that for a long time there, it looked like, there were all these TV items that said, nobody's going to shop at Winners and we value our privacy. Well, I went and pulled their financials, and a year later they were more profitable than they were the year before. So yeah, you value your privacy, but you also value getting a shirt for 27% off or whatever. So there is this sort of undercurrent of fear. There's a great video called Does What Happens in the Facebook Stay in the Facebook? Who's seen that video? It does what happens in the Facebook, stay in the Facebook. It's on YouTube. It advocates that Facebook is a CIA plot. Okay, and you can take it or leave it. You can think whatever you want about John F. Kennedy's assassination. Watch that video, and you'll come away with a little niggling idea. And I can tell you that, like I'm involved with the Shad Valley program. If I want to find kids who were in Shad Valley in 1988, I don't go to the Shad organization in Waterloo. I go to Facebook, because that's their up-to-date contact information there. I did manage to ask somebody very high in that organization, not Shad, the other one, did you guys invent Facebook? And they said, no, but we wish we had it. We sure do use it. So I think the public has this kind of consciousness level that bad stuff is happening there, and we're going to have to be careful not to stumble on that. So my point about the TJX folks is they did finally do the right thing. They said, here's your darn gift card. Now, of course, they made it very limited time, and none of you knew about it, so it's not a really good apology, but at least it's a start. So the economic consequences, I think, will be companies will start to get sued. I think that, well, there were 45 class action suits in Canada alone against Winners. So the executives need to admit that there's something wrong and then be ready, have this kind of crisis communication mode. And I think the smart ones are doing it.
Actually, one of the biggest probably is happening now that the government are not ready. The rules and regulations are not keeping up with technology. Now, what may happen, there would be a reaction and there would be all kinds of new regulation that may make it worse. So somehow the market and the people have a way of leveling off these things, and hopefully governments and or really social structure will pay attention to what's happening and will do the right thing. And the reason why I'm saying social structure, because the way I think about having my identity on a internet, on a Facebook, is totally, totally different from a 15-year-old. They don't care who sees what they have there. I care a lot. Now, partially because I'm used to the current social structure, banking structure, all kinds of other structure that makes me worry about it, because I know what can happen if somebody steals my identity. But they are not. Now, that may force a different structure in how banking is done. So all these things are interrelated, and depends on what happened. I'm sure there are going to be thousands of screw-ups. And hopefully it works itself out.
I got a big background in mobile tech. I'm shocked that nobody spoke about mobile technology as an emerging trend. I don't know if you've heard, but there's about 10 million people a day around the world that are strapping something onto their hips for the first time. There's never going to be fiber in the Himalayas, right? But there is going to be mobile internet there. It's the way people are going to interact. I've got questions around. I want to know when we're going to get to the point that the internet experience that we walk around with is as good as the one that we're wired into on our desktop at home. What's going to take to get there? Isn't that the great meeting point? Isn't that where the internet truly becomes everything it can be? And isn't that why we get together in rooms like this, to drive that kind of a user experience? Why not mobile tech? Why didn't it come up in today's discussion?
The experience could be much better. It just would be different, and that will happen. It all depends on the infrastructure and the application.
I think it's going to happen, and I won't hazard a guess of when it'll happen, but because there's such a strong commercial driving force behind it, as opposed to many academic projects right now, that's why your specific problem will happen. It's a matter of when.
And I mentioned it briefly, but yeah, mobility is very significant overall. But again, it's a case of the infrastructure and the application demand out there.
Actually, there are quite a few mobile applications that are right now being developed as we speak. There are a number of events, at least in the Bay Area, that I've attended with the worldwide, developer and entrepreneur attendance that are solely focused on the mobile space, and they do leverage cloud computing in the back. And starting from a contextual search that is just targeted for that mobile user based on their preferences, all the way to the video and multimedia streaming on the mobile devices. There is a huge, vast majority of different mobile applications that's being developed, but I think the technology now with 3G being part of our iPhones and the upcoming mobile devices, now technology being there, these applications probably will take place and probably will become quite popular, and it's going to be a trend in the next 3 to 5 years, I would think.
Briefly, we did a story on a company in New York that has this application where you take your cell phone camera, take a picture of the barcode of a product while you're in Future Shop, and it goes out to shopping.com and Amazon and sees if you can get it cheaper. The ultimate evolution of that would be that stores would have to charge admission because they'd be like museums. So what they're doing, of course, is they're hiding the barcodes so that you have to type in the exact model number of the plasma TV or whatever. So there's going to be this kind of dance, and whole structures like stores may not make sense anymore if everybody moves to buying things online. So it's going to have some interesting twists there. But that's a mobile application that makes sense because you could save $90 right on the spot.
I've actually seen a demo of a different flavor of this application where you take a picture of whatever you're trying to buy, a dress or something, and through your mobile device you send it to your friend and seek for an opinion. Is it really a cute little dress or whatever skirt? And through the, again, mobile devices, this person who may be in a different mall or wherever replies to you, yeah, I think that's great, and you can just go and buy it here. So there are all kinds of cute, neat apps that are out there in the mobile space that people are definitely seeking for and will be using.
The notion of everything moving to free, and thinking about the discussion around mobility, and I know Sun and Cisco, you don't make a lot of money in the free, giving things away. And I'm trying to reconcile this thing, when we look at mobility, we've got quite a few consumers that are pretty used to paying for things. In fact, quite a premium. And whether that, whether that will move that marketplace and the commercial activities, in fact, even faster than we saw on the internet.
The technology is becoming more accessible, and the notion of sharing and the free access to all of those applications on the web will definitely take the same effect in the mobile space, I believe. What people are going to monetize is on the business model that is going to be different, and whether it's a premium account or whether we've seen application yesterday is like you have access to so many users in your address book, and then beyond 250 or whatever you'll start paying. So some quantitative way of monetization would probably be, the way how the mobile applications will, and companies in the mobile space will monetize. But I definitely have seen a number of mobile technologies and applications that are in development where they offer their services for free initially, and then they start monetize at a certain point.
Same business models really apply whether you're on web or mobile. The other side is niche type of access for specialized access to mobile. There's a company who is offering on an iPhone access to visual images of MRI and CAT scan and so on. So that model would be totally different than kid in the school wants to look at some sport result. So a different model basically follow what is happening on the web.
I think I disagree with that point, actually. When you talk about mobile, and it's the same, you say to me it's the same business model as the web. It's really not, because here's the main difference. The huge value proposition when a marketer looks at mobile is that we can catch the individual in an environment at the specific moment when they are most receptive to a messaging point, in either through a freebie, hitting them on the hip with a text message, something like that, connect with them. I interviewed a fellow by the name of Bill Harvey, who invented the platform that went on to become the Nielsen ratings way back in the 70s. And one of the things Bill told me was that when you simply catch somebody in that environment, in that moment in space and time, right, when we can target them the correct message as a marketer and simply expose our brand, do nothing else, ask for nothing of the consumer, but use the mobile environment to expose that brand, you are 7 times more likely to get a positive response to your marketing message. You cannot recreate that business model in a wired environment.
No, I was just talking about the pricing model. But really, this could be a double-sword edge, because if I'm hitting somebody with the message at a point, people may get annoyed too. Mm-hmm. So there are lots of issues. That the key for me was the pricing model. How do I make money out of it?
Mm-hmm.
I think the expectations and the loyalty around free versus for fee is where the difference really comes in. Free has very little loyalty unless it is a very successful, stable product. If free is an unstable, low value, then it's treated and abandoned accordingly. You look at this from a number of organizations that have a software application element that they charge a fee for. How do you do maintenance ongoing, development? I've had this challenge internally at Cisco where we've looked at a product that said, we don't think we should be end-of-lifing this thing just yet. We should probably hang on for another 2 years waiting for this other generation of activity. But the cost associated with just simply sustaining mode is quite significant. So from a consumer perspective, I think free versus for fee has a loyalty and a service expectation. From a business model perspective, can for free give me enough side revenue to sustain and maintain that application? And that's more the business question there.